We're all on different paths, but at times our paths intertwine. We experience moments of victories and no doubt the valleys along the way. However, some have the sheer determination to jump over the hurdles life puts in their way. In this season opener of The Journey, I'm so excited, I sit and speak to someone who didn't allow the avalanche of horrifying statistics to bury the will to win and become outstanding. Join me for the journey. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to The Journey. Today, again, I sit and talk to somebody who embodies what it really means to overcome hurdles. And like I said, to become pretty outstanding. I sit and talk with Tristan Campbell.
Thank you.
My good friend, fellow minister in the gospel, and somebody who I really admire, and I believe you're going to be truly inspired after our conversation today. Welcome, Tristan, to The Journey.
Pleasure to be here, sis.
Yes.
Absolutely thrilled to be here, part of your journey as well. Yeah. Congrats on your new show. So.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to have you as a season opener. It's just been incredible how God opened doors and makes all kinds of ways. And the idea is to give him back the glory when it's all said and done.
That's right.
I'm so thankful to be a part of your journey, and together we're going to share and see what the Lord does. So thank you for
Absolutely.
being here.
Good to be here.
All right. So many people know Tristan or don't know Tristan. He is a software engineer.
Yeah.
But before we get into the highlights of your life, let's talk about what was it like growing up for you?
Well, I was born on the island of Jamaica. So, it was always interesting seeing the two sort of dichotomies in one's life, right?
Mm-hmm.
You start on an island where you're exposed to the elements, you're constantly outside. I try to look at myself and compare my life to, the traditional American citizen or child growing up.
Right.
And, my playtime was playing outside with rocks and climbing trees and playing with lizards. Here it's pretty much, video games and staying indoors. And so my journey is quite different than a lot of my colleagues as I sort of traverse through college and different areas of my life. And, seeing my colleagues, they had completely different upbringings.
Right.
And so I started, in Jamaica, humble beginnings,
Right.
With my cousins and my mom and different members of my family. And at some point, of course, I made the transition to the United States. Mm-hmm. And from that point on, it was really just a battle to get to where I'm at right now. So I guess we're here to discuss that.
We're going to talk about that. So talk about, you talk about you're in Jamaica, and I grew up in Jamaica as well, so I understand the outdoors kind of living, but then you took that plane, that journey from that life to this life, and then you just mentioned it was a battle. Talk to us about the battle that you had to go through, that you had to fight through to get to where you are right now.
Right. So, you talk about that initial sort of plane trip to the United States. That trip was all about giving me an opportunity to utilize the skills and the abilities that I had. Mm-hmm. My mother knew my current situation in Jamaica couldn't provide me with the platform and the opportunities to really excel. Mm-hmm. And so her objective at that point was to get me into a place where I could flourish and to use whatever skills and abilities I had and the opportunity to be exposed to, grander opportunities, right? And so some of the challenges really, you sort of transition from one country to the next. Of course, you have to reacclimate. You have to learn how to integrate to a new sort of society. Mm-hmm. You have to learn how to present yourself. Right. And so there were many challenges, especially the first time. I remember when I sort of migrated to the United States. My first day, I remember it was Grover Cleveland Middle School. This middle school, and I walk into the class. Traditionally the teachers will bring you to your homeroom or your class. I remember walking in, and the teacher asked me, "Hey, this is our new student. Say hi to Tristan." They said hi, and I said hi, and I gave a sort of a brief introduction to myself. But then when I started speaking, people recognized, this guy is not from the United States. This guy is not from
You had an accent.
this country. And so I had an accent. And so people would immediately recognize me as one who was from the islands.
Wow.
It wasn't necessarily anything about my character or who I was. And so that was one of the first things I wanted to adjust, right? That was one of the first sort of points of readjustment. I wanted to make sure that when I met people, they didn't immediately make any sort of preconceived judgments about me based on the first thing they heard from me, which was my accent, right? And so I worked really hard to
How hard?
really hard to
Really hard.
readjust very quickly how I spoke. I wanted to sort of eliminate that part of me, not eliminate it, but sort of put it, bring it back when I need to. But
Yes.
of course, I wanted people to judge me based on my character and who I was, and not necessarily my accent. Because when they hear you, a Jamaican,
Yes. The stigma.
yes, the stigma immediately becomes attached to you.
Yes.
And you have to follow, you have to walk around with that stigma. And so, it was always interesting.
Always interesting.
Adjusting.
That's pretty good. And so how did you navigate now from high school? What was that like for you, coming in from, like you said, a different culture into high school, but now you understood that now you're in the land of opportunity, and the battles that that you had to hurdle, and here it is, you tackled the speech, the language, because you didn't want to be identified with that. But then here it is, there's more things that you had to overcome. Because all right, this is one situation, but then I have to become somebody.
Right.
I have to be somebody. There's an expectation. How did you navigate to that?
Right. So the journey from high school to even college, it was interesting, right? So you enter the United States, your battle is immediately twofold. Number one, you have to overcome sort of acclimating to a new culture. And number two, you have sort of stereotypes that are attached to the color of your skin.
Right.
And so, I was in a high school that was mostly African American, sure.
Right.
But immediately upon sort of transitioning to the university life, that's when it becomes really difficult, right? Because you're intermingling with people who have had just better training in their formative years, in their years of when they were preteens, when they were teenagers, and so my battle was immediately difficult. Why? I had aspirations to be an engineer, right? And so, speaking of engineering, you sort of jump in a program, and you sort of read the statistic that says over 30% or so of the first year engineers drop the major because it's so difficult. And then you look at everyone who's in the college, it's probably 98% white. And then of course, you have probably one or two other African Americans or blacks or, whatever you want to call it. And then you have this very difficult curriculum, and then you're taking courses that many of your colleagues have already taken.
Wow.
As in high school, right?
Wow.
The privilege that they've enjoyed certainly before entering college, and when you don't have those opportunities to sort of facilitate your transition into the university life, you find very quickly that you have to work a lot harder than your colleagues. You have to work twice as long.
What was it like when you entered college, and seeing that you were like the minority?
Right.
In a field that is so, accelerated.
Right. So one of the things I understood at the time was that I have to be very careful with how I conduct myself, because one, people's perception of people with my color skin could be defined by what they see on TV, what they see in magazines, what they see in different forms of media. Many of them may not have direct contact with one who's black.
Wow.
And so the only preconceived notions they have about, say, an African American or a black person or Caribbean American or what have you, is that they are potentially violent, or they're potentially volatile, and they they have very poor social skills, and they're not very intelligent. There's all sorts of things that are
things, yeah.
and a lot of things they won't say, but
Right.
it's sort of implied based on
right.
what they see and observe from media. And there are instances even on campus when there's this one instance I can really talk about.
Right.
I remember there were a string of robberies that were on campus.
Oh.
And typically when a robbery happens on campus, you'd get a notification in the email. Warning, there was a robbery in this area of the campus. Suspects were wearing this and this shirt and this and that shirt. By the way, they were black. Right? And, so yeah.
Yeah.
So you have this thing going on, and then, now, can you imagine the sort of reaction
Right.
that the entirety of the campus, now listen, this is 95% white. Can you imagine the reaction when you're walking around and you're one of the only blacks on the campus?
On the campus, wow.
And you can see the visible discomfort around you because of what they've sort of just read. Immediately you can see the effect. And
Is it him?
yes,
Right.
exactly. And so that's one of the hurdles. And so I had to make sure that in every interaction I had on campus, that I was on my A game.
Wow.
I couldn't have a moment of weakness. I couldn't show weakness at any time.
Wow.
Because it's taught me the importance of sort of first impressions.
Last.
Yes, they do.
Wow.
And if you ruin that first interaction, you are riding sort of a perception of your race in these people's minds for years to come even.
Wow.
So it was tough.
It was tough.
It was tough, being in courses where you're the only black sitting there, or people having sort of preconceived notions that you have to crush right on the spot.
Wow.
I wanted to make sure that when I spoke to people, if they were to speak to me on the phone, they would think I'm someone else.
Someone else.
And when they see me, like, oh, that's a living contradiction.
Yeah.
A living contradiction walking around. Society says that you're supposed to be this way, but I refuse. I want to be this way. So
did you feel like in those moments that you had something to prove?
Well, yes and no. Yes, because I knew what people had expected of me.
you.
I wanted to crush them. I wanted to crush every expectation out there, and I'm not done yet. There's still certain things I want to achieve on this planet that completely contradicts what people expected from someone who was born in Jamaica and was raised there for a bit and came to the United States. I wanted to go beyond what anyone expected of me, and so I wanted to kill those initial sort of preconceptions. I wanted to knock them down, crush them, absolutely crush them, because I didn't want to be a certain way because people expected me to. And I see this all the time.
Right.
I even didn't want to call it out, but I noticed there were other sort of African Americans or blacks on campus, and you'd see them, some of them act a certain way because they expect, people expected that of them, right?
Wow.
Oh, he should be a joker. Oh, he should be this. Yeah, and I'm like, this is your opportunity to really shock them and give them something else, right? But here you are conforming to what they expect.
And you've decided I'm not going to go with the status quo.
I don't. I think humans, we are born with so much talent, and we're not limited by the color of our skin.
Right.
It's how we limit ourselves that prevent us from really reaching those climaxes in life.
And I know somebody's going to be like quoting that or tweeting that somewhere. Where did that drive come from though inside of you? Because like you said, that's not expected. That shouldn't be expected of somebody like you, a black man, a man coming from the islands. Where did that will to win, that drive to win came from?
I have to attribute it to two things, right?
Yes.
Number one, we're going to talk about my mom later on, of course, but she's one of them. And of course, number two, it's a certain prayer that she prayed, and I can talk about that at some point.
Yeah, go ahead, go for it.
I remember when I was growing up, she, it's going to be mentioned that, I grew up with just my mom, didn't have a father, right? And I remember she told me, she waited until I was a teenager before she told me this, that when she recognized that I would be living in this reality without a father. That, you know, she had to pray a certain prayer to God.
Wow.
And that prayer was simply, God, be his father. She just told me that. Wow. Be his father. And I believe that God heard that prayer, because I'm given sort of a drive, and we can talk about my motivators and how I was motivated, but I was given a drive to succeed from the very start. Right? Not only that, number two, I knew that my mom, she also wanted to be an engineer. And so wrapped up in my efforts is not only the drive that God gives me, but also I'm carrying with me my mom's dreams.
A seed.
Yeah. So I wanted to make sure that I made her proud, regardless of our circumstances, from Jamaica to now. That she can think back whenever she's, let's say she's on her deathbed or something, that you know, I raised a son to the best of my ability, and you know, he achieved all he could, right? And so I wanted to make sure she was able to say those words regardless, right? Right. So that's been it's of course there's more complexity to my drive, but those are sort of the root drivers, right? God and sort of my mom and her you know, her dreams wrapped up in me. So.
It's incredible. I've never heard that about your story before. The power of a mother's prayer.
Yeah.
And I know that there are probably some single mothers right now who may be watching and having a little boy, not knowing what to do with him with so much energy.
Yeah.
But you're saying, moms, there's something powerful about you praying.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what the outcome could be.
Right.
Sitting here right now.
Right.
That just, like, I'm getting tears in my eyes, because that is really, really powerful. And she said, God, become his father.
Become his father.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. We're going to be right back for more incredible story from Tristan. We'll be right back. Wow. Hey, welcome back to the journey, everyone. I hope that you truly are inspired so far. And we're going to continue our conversation with Tristan about his mom's prayer and what that did. We're going to talk about his father. So Tristan, you shared that you grew up with your mom.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like not to, or to learn that I'm not gonna have my father in my life? What did that make you feel like as a boy? Because there's something that children look forward to, is to have their fathers or both parents in the home. When upon recognition that this is not gonna happen, what did that make you feel like?
Right. So I didn't really have the shock of that reality early on in my life, because you sort of recognize those things when you start comparing yourself to other kids. And at the time, I didn't really see much of a father figure in many of my friends when I was really young. So I didn't really understand the importance of having a father until I made it to the United States and I started seeing the importance of a father, right? Because I quickly noticed that there's certain things that no matter how hard your mother will try, that she cannot teach you, right?
Wow.
There's certain things only a father can teach you. And as you're growing and you're maturing and you're becoming a man, you know, there's certain lessons that you sort of have to learn on your own through trial and error, which can be painful sometimes, right? And you know, if you don't have that father figure to express those lessons to you, it's really hit and miss. You can either learn it, or you can move on in life without learning it and suffer because you haven't learned those lessons early on in life. And so I recognized the harsh reality that I didn't have a father until I started learning, until I wanted to advance and actually grow, and I'm saying, hey, there's missing pieces here. There's certain things that I didn't learn. Is there something missing? Well, I didn't have a father to teach me these things.
But you didn't let that stop you.
Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not. You know, I thank God for wisdom, because I recognize in myself that this is only a hurdle that you're going to have to overcome, right?
Right.
And you know, he's good enough to, God is good enough to give you sort of the provisions necessary to overcoming those battles. I remember, you know, many times he's come through for me in that sense, right? You know, for instance, I didn't take, you know, I wanted to be an engineer. You had to, you know, there were some coding courses that I had to take. Didn't take any coding courses at all.
Wow.
I'm jumping into a class that I have no, if anything was to knock me out of my degree, it was this class.
That class,
right?
wow.
And I remember this one instance. God comes through all the time.
Yes, he does.
This one instance where, you know, sitting, you know, you have these problem sets that you have to complete over the weekend.
Right.
And it can take like 2-3 hours to complete.
Oh, Lord.
Even more,
Yes.
more, depending on your experience level. And I'm there sitting in this laboratory with all the computers,
Right.
trying to solve this problem. We're talking 11 p.m., 12 a.m.
Wow.
At night, right? And I'm sitting there, and typically in these courses, you'll have like a teaching assistant who's supposed to help you, and you know, they have office hours, and typically office hours is well early in the day, like 3 p.m. or something like
Right.
that. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, there's no way anyone's going to help me with this. Anyone.
Wow.
I'm there trying to figure out how to do this, and guess who walks in? Within that same hour, midnight, wasn't supposed to be there.
Wow.
The TA of the course.
Wow.
Walks in, sits next to me, and said, okay, what's going on here? And starts helping me to solve the problem.
Your father.
Yep, finish it all in that night. And if that TA didn't come at that time, who knows how long it would have took me. I mean, there's certain things that I just didn't know.
Right.
And so God sent that person at the right time to make sure that I didn't fall out of the course and quit, right? Because there's certain things you just don't know, and that's where God comes in.
I sense in that moment the activation of your mother's prayer.
Right.
God just sending help right in the nick of time. But what do they say? He may not come when you want him, but he'll be there right on time.
He's always watching.
Right on time. And so you've went through your courses in college, and you finished your course. You graduated BU.
That's right.
2013. Just outstanding, by the way. And then now you're going to navigate the career path.
Right.
Talk to us about that transition. Yes.
Yeah, industry is an entirely different animal, right? You know, one of the harder things about entering the workforce, especially in the technical field, is that they're looking for years of experience, even as an entry level engineer, right? They're looking for a lot more experience than you should have.
Right.
And I remember just interviewing, getting rejected here and there, you know, interviewing for positions I don't even want. I just wanted to get the experience, right? Now, I graduated with an electrical engineering degree, but I wanted to do computer science and software engineering. I asked God, I would love to have a position in software development, because that's where the industry is going, right? I was given a really good chance, like a few months after I graduated, to be a software developer and doing Android development, developing Android applications for some touchscreens that we were building in house. And so that experience was quite interesting, because we were working on a small team, and I was again the only black individual in the office, and so the professionals, you can have people with different ranges of experience. It could be in their 20s, or they could be in their 50s. But being able to navigate the workplace and understanding workplace politics and understanding how to navigate the different egos is a really important skill to have. And I've learned a lot in my time acclimating to the university life, because there's some similarities there in how you interact with people, professors, how you interact with research assistants, how do you interact with different people. And so, I mean, completely different, completely interesting. You're solving problems, and you're kind of having to prove yourself a bit. People don't expect you to be there.
And you're slowly moving up the ladder.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been able to, sort of achieve senior status as a software developer.
Look at
Thanks
that.
be to God.
Look at God.
And even beyond that, I'm now starting a position this year, being a software architect. So that's even beyond. Now I'm sort of influencing where a company spends their money in certain fields.
That's awesome.
Edge computing and I think there's even more. And
That's
why stop
incredible.
now, right? Why stop now?
Why stop now? You're gonna crush it.
Yeah, gotta keep going.
Gotta keep going. I mean, can you imagine?
No,
Can you imagine
absolutely not.
what has happened in your life?
Growing up in Jamaica, I did not expect that I'd ever reach anywhere near where I'm at right now. And owning a house, having 2 cars, doing having all this stuff, right? And even now, I still don't believe or feel like it belongs to me. It just feels like God just decided, I'm going to give you these things for your life. Enjoy it.
Wow.
And it just feels, whatever is added to my life, I never feel like I have ownership of it. It feels like God decided to just give it to me.
To give it to you.
Regardless of my expertise. And I've always said it to myself. No matter how smart you think you are, Tristan, remember it was God that gave you what you have. And so you cannot flaunt it and go around and show off and, like you've achieved everything.
Is this the reason why you have this disposition of humility?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I cannot, if I become proud and, sort of overbearing about what I have, I'm detracting or taking away glory from God, right? I have to make sure that when people see what I have, they recognize that it is not only my skill or ability that gave me what I have, but just the fact that the Lord himself enabled me to have these things. Because I remember the stories of when I struggled and God came through and said, okay, I'm going to help him out.
Right.
And I've routinely learned that if you can have sort of a humble countenance in how you conduct yourself, the Lord is always watching. He's always watching. And so, if you can please him in that way, he has no problem giving you more. Because he sees that the way you conduct yourself with the possessions he's given you, that you are, not bringing glory to yourself.
Is that the secret?
That's one of the secrets.
That's one of the secrets.
You're not bringing glory to yourself.
Yeah.
And so when you get blessed, I implore you, learn to take it with humility. And always, sort of give glory back to God in a way. In your countenance, in your, if you, it's just really, once you learn to put it in practice, I think you'll learn the lesson and you'll see what I mean.
That's so good. The secret of getting more from God is to be humble. I love it. So, senior status at work, and now you're again just climbing the ladders of what it wasn't supposed to be like. I think that is pretty outstanding. I want to go back a little bit though, to talk about Mom, and this was her aspiration as well. How does she feel seeing you fulfill this dream that she had? What are your conversations like with her? Right. Just seeing her little boy, because I'm sure you're always going to be her little boy.
Right. Well, when I talk to her, it doesn't seem like she's surprised.
Wow.
It seems like she always believed that this would happen.
Wow.
Maybe she has a lot of faith in the prayer she prayed. Maybe I should ask her about that. She doesn't seem very surprised. And even when I talk about moving up the ladder, and I'm like, Mom, I'm thinking about applying for this position and going further, and she would always tell me, well, you're worth it. Why don't you go after it? And I think somehow when she prayed that prayer, God may have put in her sort of the words to speak at right times to encourage me when I'm moving forward. Because she's not surprised. It's like she expects it of me. And I'm sure, I don't ask her this, but I'm sure at work or wherever she is, she talks about me in a good light because,
she's proud.
Right. I hope to make her proud. That's what I'm saying. I hope that I can make her proud not only as a son, but a professional. That when she talks about me, she can talk about me with pride. And that's my son, right? And so, you know, I'm grateful that God enabled her to pray that prayer, because I don't think she's surprised in any way. She sort of expects it, and you know, this one thing I appreciate about my mom is that she recognized that all I needed was not only that prayer but also opportunity. And she can do only so much as a mom in her limited resources growing up, was to push me up and give me, you know, sort of expose me to the sunlight, with, you know, for long enough that I can sort of bud, my flowers can grow, right? And that's the thing about single moms, and I think a lot of people need to understand that. If you're a single mom and you have a single son, the single sons, or single daughters, you got to understand this. Daughters, sons, whatever, you got to understand this. Your mom can do only as much as she can possibly do. But there comes a point where you have to recognize that, okay, she has done all she can do. Now the baton is in my hands.
It's in your hands.
I have to use the opportunities that are exposed to me. You see, a lot of, you know, we make this mistake in teenagehood, in young adulthood, that it's all about pleasure and having fun. But you can squander a lifetime of success because you have decided to trade one moment of opportunity for a moment of pleasure. And I think you need to understand that these critical opportunities that you will find in your youth are so important. If you can capitalize, you can have fun after you get your success. You can go on trips and you can do what you want. But I think during your formative years, when your mom or your single dad decides to
I like that you just said that.
Give you as much opportunity as possible, you want to capitalize. You want to be greedy. You want to take what you can from the table. Don't sit there and decide to have your priorities be something else.
That's good.
And that's what I've learned.
That's
you know,
good.
My mom, she put me in a position where I could succeed, but you have to somehow get that.
Get it.
You have to say, okay, why am I here? I'm here to eat. I'm here to sort of ensure my financial future, because what I'm doing now is going to have great impact on the outcome of my life. I don't care who you are. Unless you hit it big, unless you come up with some billion-dollar idea, right? What you're doing now is going to have immense impact on the outcome of your life. And so if you're in your teenagehood or even in your early 20s, use the opportunities you have now. Capitalize on the opportunities that your mom has fought so hard to give you.
If your mom was sitting in my seat right now, what would you say to her?
Well, first I'll thank her for the prayer that she prayed. But I also tell her, you know, she's always been sort of, you could tell she was supportive in a way that, you know, it's like she was pushing me, but she was
like the eagle out the nest.
Yeah, she wasn't like overbearing, but you can tell she was very supportive of my dreams, and of course I want to thank her for that, because there are many times, let's say a new semester in college is starting, these books would cost like $1,000 per semester. And I remember my mom, she was working at, I don't remember what job it was, but she wasn't making that much. And she would just give me her credit card and say, okay, buy your books, knowing the sort of impact it would have on her credit.
Oh my goodness.
And so my mom made a lot of sacrifices to ensure that I would get to where I'm at right now. And so, it's really, that's why I felt sort of obligated in a sense to use the opportunities I have to sort of make her proud. So,
well, I'm sure she is proud, and all of us who have encountered you are proud as well. And not only that, Tristan, you are sort of becoming the voice of your generation. I've been privileged to sit and hear you preach, and just this prophetic voice. How did you sort of intertwined your life, your secular life, and now into the ministry, and I know we talk, you fuse them into one. When did you realize that you had a call of God on your life, and that you've decided, I'm gonna do what He says. I'm gonna become His mouthpiece.
Right. You know, God has always been sort of a critical piece of my growth, and even before I was really attending church, you'd see sort of His effect on my life.
Yes.
In sort of ensuring that I made it in life, right? He's been always steering me. He's always been ordering my steps.
Right.
And so, you know, when I decided to just sort of join the church, and I didn't really have any aspirations to be a preacher or to really be involved in ministry. But the more, you know, I sort of lived within His kingdom, or among His people, you begin to realize that, I have some obligation here. There's something I must do. It's really hard to describe.
Yes.
That there's some outcome that I have to have an effect on. There's something that I have to do. You just feel vested. Even though you haven't been there for long, you just feel vested. And, you know, we know the plan of salvation, you know, repentance, being baptized, receiving the gift of the Holy Ghost. And I remember, I got baptized in, I think, 2004. And then I didn't receive the Holy Ghost until like 3 years after. That's 3 years tarrying. At one point, you know, I wanted to quit. Because I remember this one service, my cousin received the Holy Ghost, and I was like, God, you decide to give my cousin the Holy Ghost, and he just walks in and tries and gets it, and I'm, you know. You've
been here for a while.
Yeah, and I was in the car and we're driving home, and I was like, I am so done. I'm so done. But, you know, when you love someone, you just don't leave like that.
Wow.
And I loved God. I did.
I loved Him.
He somehow instilled with me that love, and I couldn't just leave, you know. And so I ultimately came back, and I tried again. I think it was August 23rd, 2007. It was between 8:40 and 9. I received the gift of the Holy Ghost.
No kidding. You remember the time.
Yeah. I remember exactly how I felt. I remember, you know, I was like, whoa, you know, my you know, it was just an incredible experience.
He has that effect on you.
Yeah,
when
exactly.
He gives us Himself.
Right, exactly. And from there, I just felt more empowered. I remember spending time in a basement praying for hours, like literally hours, like an hour, you know, hour plus, just on my face sometimes. And, you know, and it's just a way He sort of reveals to you that you have something to do, not only through one-on-one revelation, but through people even. You know, how He speaks through your brothers and sisters in Christ, how He speaks through, say, His sons and daughters to you, right? And you sort of know that, okay, this is something I have to accomplish. And I'm constantly reminded of the faces of people that I haven't met yet that are depending on me to execute this ministry or whatever I have to do, right? You know, I don't want to have it be said that after I pass away from this life that there are millions of people that couldn't receive God in any way or hear about God because I decided I didn't want to, you know, sort of live that spiritual life and execute ministry, right? You know, you can achieve as much as you want, you can gain as much as you want on this earth, but you have to recognize that what you do for God is what lasts. And so I wanted to make sure that I left some legacy as a result of my actions in God. And I haven't arrived anywhere yet. And so I'm just...
That's not what we believe.
I haven't arrived anywhere, and I believe there's still more. I believe He is...
As you said that, where do you see your ministry going?
Yeah. So, you know, I truly believe over the last few months or years even, I've sort of reached this place where I'm more infatuated with truth. Truth. I want truth. And, you know...
That's good.
One of the things I hope to accomplish in my quote-unquote ministry in God is that I'm able to dispel what is true, what is man-made, and what is of God. And if God can empower me to do that, I believe the people will be better off, right? There are a lot of denominations on this earth, and there are a lot of people who believe a lot of things. And the problem with humanity is that we all think we're right. You can have 100 people in a room, they could be convinced of something, And because they're convinced, they believe it's true.
Wow.
But there could be one person in the room who has the truth, but would be looked down upon because the others are convinced that they know the truth. And so it's easy to fall into a category and believe what you believe is true.
Right.
And so I know there's a God. And I know he's speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I know he has truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there are a lot of people with a bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I know
knowledge. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my goal is to reach the place where I can receive constant truth from God and then dispel it to people so they know what God is saying, right? I don't want to be so caught up in my own knowledge, my own wisdom.
Right.
I don't want to worship myself. I don't want to think of myself as someone great where everything I say is gospel. I want to know exactly what God says, and I want to translate that to the people.
That sounds like the prophetic to me. But you've totally, and I know that so many would testify to this. You have truly impacted so many lives. I can tell you that you've impacted my life along this journey. Many of your messages has been right where has hit at the time that was really needed and has really confirmed God's word. And so this is the reason why I'm on this journey. And so you really, really have, raised the bar, if you will, for what ministry should be like and look like. You embody that so well. And I can say I am in awe of everything that God is doing in your life. And I'm looking forward for the rest of what he has, and God has his hands on you. I'm sure you've heard it before, but I want to say this. God has his hands on you, and whatever you do his will. Whatever you do his will. I'm extremely proud of you. I want to ask you something fun.
Sure.
I'm going to give you 3 words, and I want you to sort of preach it.
Wow.
So, here we go. Believe.
Oh, believe? You see, that's an interesting game. I mean, I've been thinking about, belief. I think we have a lot of people who are believing God for a lot of things, right? And one thing I would say, as we believe, is that we must consider very carefully what we're believing for. And the purpose for what we're believing God for.
Right.
Are we believing God for something that we can consume upon our own lusts, or are we believing him for something that could, sort of maybe embarrass somebody else because of your possession, something you can flaunt around? I think what people are believing God for needs to be constantly put in check, because a lot of us, we believe God for a lot of things. Our faith is good. It's solid. But because of the purpose for what we're believing for can be corrupted. And, sometimes we don't see that. And, God sees it. And sometimes he won't answer your prayer until you change it. Until you say, okay, God, I've been believing you for this thing for the wrong reasons. Allow me to change this prayer so that it reflects your will. And you see, God is open. I believe God is a blessing God. He will give to you what you believe for him, from him. But a lot of us, we don't check our intents. And sometimes I have to step back. Why am I believing you for this? Why do I want this? And what am I after? If I ask God for, a lot of people probably pray this prayer, you ask God for a house. And I believe that I'm going to pass the mortgage process if you're into a mortgage. Well, why are you believing? Are you trying to prove to people that you're trying to move up? It's just you have to really consider what you're believing God for. And so I like, when I think of belief, it's important, believing in God, and of course, you have to learn to contribute to, believing with others for what they want in God too, right? Being able to step with someone and say, sister or brother, I believe with you that you're going to get this thing. You can't be all about yourself. I remember one dear sister, she said, be an active participant in your blessing.
Yes.
But you can also say, be an active participant in your brother's blessing. Right? Be an active participant
That's a twist.
in your brother's or sister's blessing.
Yes.
If your brother or sister needs you to make their dream a reality,
Yes.
you step in.
You step in.
And you're being an active participant in your own brother's or sister's blessing. And so, believing is we like to simplify it, but it is complex. You have to think about what you're believing God for, why you're doing it, you got to constantly, for me, and this is for more mature saints, you got to constantly think about
why
God, why, and God's glory, right? Ultimately what I achieve on this earth will be a reflection of God, right? And so I want to make sure that when people see me and what I've accomplished, that's God's work.
That's God's word.
Right?
Well, that was Sunday school. So I'm going to give you the 10 minutes. Valley.
Valley. Interesting. Yeah. Valley. You asked me to preach.
Yes.
But I can't. It's an interesting challenge. Valleys. One of the hardest things that I've learned on this earth is being able to keep your identity in the valley. The valley, it can take a lot away from you. Your confidence, your ability to trust in God, your ability to believe in God, and sometimes this is where a lot of us are still in valleys, right? We are physically out of them, but our mind is still there. Right? You've been through some difficulty or some setback, and your mind is constantly bombarded by the reality that you went through that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've learned is, while you find yourself in the valley, you must learn to maintain your Christian identity. You have got to learn how to maintain your identity as a child of God, which means maintaining your peace in the valley. Don't compromise it for anything. And one of the things that we find when we're in the valley is that we're tempted to run to different sources. God says, I'm your source, I'm your strength, I'm your shield. But some of us, we look to other sources of strength and thereby corrupt or misalign the will of God in our lives because we're looking for different ways of comfort. When all we had to do was stick with what God told us. Fight through it. Sometimes it's not hard. It's sometimes it's not easy to pray. Some days I'm in the valley and I want to pray. I get on my knees. I'm like, I can't even say anything.
Yeah, been there. Yeah.
And you're like, God, give me the words to speak because I can't even pray. But the idea is always be honest with God too. God, I can't even pray. I don't know what to say to you. And sometimes all it takes is just sitting there on your knee, kneeling by your bedside or wherever, and just meditating. Sometimes you just can't say anything, and that's okay.
That's okay.
Because God, you'll find that He understands us a lot more than we think.
Yes. Now for the main service.
Oh my God.
Victory.
Victory. Right. Yeah. Victory. Victory is a lot more sweeter when we talked about the valley, right? Yes. It's a lot more sweeter when you can say that you held on to the end. And I think one of the greatest victories, of course, is on the day of judgment, Rapture Day, when the rapture, when the church is caught up. There'll be a lot of people in tears, I believe, as they're being caught up in the air.
Happy day.
I endured.
Happy day.
I fought. And you can look to the side and you can see your sister or your brother in church rising with you.
Happy day.
And it's just going to be like, I could say to you, Sister Danny, it's over. We made it. And, victory just feels good when you do it the right way, when you win the right way, when you exhibited the patience, when you waited on God, and when the word that He told you becomes reality. And there's no sweeter victory because without any shadow of a doubt that it was God Himself that gave you that victory because it happened the way He told you it would, right? There's certain victories that when you win, for a fact that it's God. There's no way this could have been engineered by me. And I notice some of us, we like to, not knocking anyone's testimony, but some of us, we like to explain things in a way as trying to give God, help. Like, I did, when you speak, when God does something for you, when you talk about it, it's evident that God was involved. And so, you want to be gracious in victory.
Right.
You don't want to be boasting. You want to make sure that when you have victory over your enemies or whoever it is that was causing you issue, you want to make sure you conduct yourself in the right way, because God is still watching how you conduct yourself, right? So, victory, there's conduct in the valley, but there's also conduct when you win, when you have victory. And it's much sweeter when you're able to wait on God's word and see it materialize in your life. So yeah.
I mean, I'm mesmerized. I could listen to this all day long. And on the flip side, when you talk about sweet victories, seeing you become, seeing you really live this outstanding life with great moral character. When you go out into the world itself, and you see some of the atrocities that are happening to black men like yourself, how does that make you feel? And is there any sense of guard that you put up when you are going out in the world? Again, I don't even know how to fully terms, but how does it make you feel, seeing that I've worked so hard? I've come from this little humble island in Jamaica. I've worked really hard in high school, really worked hard in college. I have my profession. Does it scare you to go out in the world and enjoy it?
Well, yes, it's interesting when I see my black brothers and sisters, and sometimes how they are struggling, and it really is heartbreaking sometimes, because I know that captured within each of them is someone great. There's a doctor in there. Wow. There's a professor. There's a lawyer. There's someone who can contribute in massive ways. I believe that even the cure for cancer lived in maybe someone's body who's might have been passed, or they might be living right now, but they may be in a tough position. And I believe a lot of us, a lot of them really, my black brothers and sisters, a lot of them have been forgotten, abandoned. A lot of them just needed someone who showed one act of kindness. I remember this one instance. This was like 2 days ago. This has nothing to do with race, but I remember I was coming out of the supermarket. I had one of those sort of paper bags, and it fell. I had a glass bottle there, broke, and a man just sort of walked up and said, "Do you need any help?" And it was a simple gesture,
right?
But as I was thinking about it, the words came into my head. I don't know if it was God. I don't want to say, but it was just wisdom came to my head. How many people's lives could have been changed by just one simple act of kindness? And I believe there are many people like that walking around today, that all they needed was just one instance of true love expressed to them that would set them on the right path. And I don't think, when I look at my black brothers and sisters, how a lot of them are trying, a lot of them have to turn to whatever to survive, and sometimes it's looked down upon. We're all in different sort of scenarios, right?
We're on different paths.
On different paths, and I believe that I don't ever believe that any single person is 100 yards away from adjustment. I think some of us are just only a yard away, just one shift, right? You could be on a path from Florida to London. You can have a straight line, but if you were to change course just a little bit from the start, just a meter, if you look at the projection, you'd end up somewhere in France. Just one small adjustment, right? So we underestimate just the power of one small adjustment. One small adjustment. And like you said, I've achieved a good amount of things, and I try to make sure that I enjoy it, because you have these things, and I know people, you might feel guilty for sort of enjoying certain things, because no, enjoy it. If God gives you something, you enjoy it. But and I asked that question because I know that there's so many young men
you know, who, like you said, just need one act of kindness, one mother's prayer.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, one person to say, I believe in you.
Right.
I see you. But for some odd reason, they're not getting that.
Yeah.
And I sort of want people to see you as what's possible.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of so many, a plethora of things right now. I'm just looking on so many young men who just need that aid. And if you could say one thing to that young man or a mother who's, again, raising that young man, what would you say to them to kind of help them out of the dumps that they may be in?
Right. We all find ourselves in valley. I'm not trying to belittle what people are going through.
Right.
You could be in a very dark valley right now. But one thing for sure is that all of what could happen to you, all the provisions that could fall into your life, you may not see it yet. So I don't think you should ever excuse yourself and say, well, I have a right to continue being this way or giving up. Because, you know, many of the help that I received, I didn't see coming. For some reason, life loves to give people a chance, and I believe God gives people a chance who will have the resolve to just keep walking forward despite circumstances.
Yeah.
And I think many of us can find ourselves out of many valleys if we learn to just keep walking. A lot of us, we have this mindset that I'll always be here. I'll always do this. Well, I'll always, you know, it becomes this sort of self-destructive behavior that keeps you locked in to the dump. Well, I'm telling you that it won't always be like that. You know, the provisions, the help that you will need will come along the way, but you have to make sure that you're continuing to walk forward. If I were to look back at my life and say to myself, well, this is where I'm at and I'm never coming out of here, well, probably I would have never come out. But the thing is, the help I needed came at the right time, right? For instance, when I was in high school, there were certain scholarships I didn't know about.
Wow.
There were certain applications that I would have never applied to if it wasn't for a certain guidance counselor that I had.
Wow.
I was smart, sure.
Right.
I had the grades, sure. But until I knew that information to apply to this and that, that would help me, I was able to get a full ride to Boston University. Full ride scholarship, 4 years all paid for.
Wow.
Only because one person gave me the information I knew. And you see, information at the right time is very, very powerful. Right? I could have been over $200,000 in debt for an education, right?
Yeah.
Undergrad, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes no matter how, you can do everything right, but still fall short. And I think we need to understand that there's help along the way. There's help. And learn to take help. Don't be proud. Learn to take help.
And lastly, who is Jesus to you?
Probably the most critical, actually most critical part of my life. You know, it's very hard for me to live this life without considering his influence. He is my strength. We like to say that a lot, but I mean it. He is my strength. There are times where, you know, I felt like I was standing alone. But he would, you know, you'd open the Bible and you would find that one scripture that he could just give to you very quickly. There are times when I'm half asleep and maybe you haven't had the experience, but I'm half asleep in sort of a subconscious state, and there would be like a divine sort of impartation of words directed to me with my name in it. You can't hear the voice, but you know what the words are saying.
Right.
And you're kind of in a subconscious state, and you're like, and you just get up and you write it down.
Right.
And it's just God giving you encouragement. He never sleeps, he never slumbers. He is the reason I exist. And my sole purpose on this earth is to be like him, to please him, and to know him. You know.
You think he became your ultimate daddy?
Yes, he is. And even now, you know, I don't know what else he's planning. And that's the exciting part about God. You just never know.
Just
you know.
never know.
At any time he can do anything, and you just, like, you know, you just got to thank him along the way.
You see, sometimes we see people where they are now, but we don't see where they've been, where they're coming from. And over to our inspirational piece. Adversity is inevitable. And every challenge you face, hidden within, is strength to fortify your ability to confront future obstacles. So the next time you're faced with a mountain that just can't seem to get out of your way, dare I say to you, just climb it. Say this with me. My present circumstances are just a cargo to get me to where I'm destined to be. I am more than a conqueror. The journey continues. We'll talk soon. Bye, everyone.